Deion Sanders says that Shedeur is not going to the draft this year. He wants him to be number 1 overall in the draft, not number 2 to Caleb Williams. And there's kind of two sides here, right? The earlier you get picked in the NFL draft, usually you're going to a bad situation. You guys heard me say it with JT, bad roster, possibly bad franchise. Unless you're having Kyle Shanahan give up the house or the Panthers give up the house to move up to the first overall, maybe, second, third overall pick, you're more than likely going to a Arizona Cardinals, Chicago Bears, maybe Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts type of football team. And I know with the way that Deion has presented himself with Colorado this year, with the way that he is going to absolutely continue to go through the season, because it's personal for him. They're not here. They're coming. They've arrived. They're here to do big things. We know what he wants for Shiloh, what he wants for Deion Sanders Jr., what he wants for Shedeur Sanders. And with his son being Shedeur as the quarterback of Colorado, we know he wants him to go first overall, just like he said Travis Hunter after one game. Travis Hunter's a number 1 pick on both sides of the football. Deion loves his kids, literally Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, Travis Hunter, he thinks Travis is really a lot like him. He thinks he's a lot like Prime Time. He's going to want to see the biggest thing for these kids. But does he really want his son going to a potential team with a bad roster, with a bad leadership? You guys just heard a spillover about how coaching really matters with Kevin Stefanski with the Cleveland Browns, and you damn sure just heard the probably close to 40-minute verdict on Justin Fields and how you have to have a solid foundation if you want things to actually be able to perform. And where you land in this league absolutely matters. So for Deion Sanders to want his son to be picked first, I hear you on the motivation. I hear you on the confidence. I hear you on the message loud and clear, Coach Prime. I hear you, Time, no doubt about it. But I believe that you would realistically like Shedeur to be in a better situation, just like Justin Herbert landed with the Chargers. Just like some other quarterbacks that were drafted later on that probably landed with a squad that was going to better suit them than being a top 3, top 5 pick. But here's also the other thing that I think about as well. Deion understands that Shedeur has only played 3 Pac-12 games so far, and it will just be 1 full year of doing so by the time they get to the end of this season with Colorado. Shedeur needs more than that. Shedeur needs more of 2 excellent years at Jackson State, 2 SWAC championships, and possibly whatever happens at the end of Colorado's season before he declares for the draft. I would like to think that not only would he want to get more playing time, but that he would play, obviously kind of goes hand in hand. He would play that second year, maybe even try to get another year of eligibility. I'm not necessarily privy on how that exactly works for some of these players, but I think Deion knows that his son needs more playing time than just a little bit of Pac-12 football, especially in the especially with, the Colorado Buffs. This is a reason I have Bo Nix above Shedeur Sanders on my, kind of big board that I'm making right now for quarterbacks, because Bo Nix played years with Auburn. Yes, he might not have been great, but he was competitive as hell. He played under Gus Malzahn. He got to play Georgia every year, Florida, Alabama every year in the Iron Bowl, Tennessee, especially getting to play Alabama in the Iron Bowl, which is arguably the best college football game every year, always one of the best. It draws a crowd. I like Bo Nix, even though he's only been with Oregon going into his second year, because of the fact that he's seen those SEC offenses, been inside that SEC play, looked at those SEC defenses in an LSU, in a Georgia that unloads players every year to the draft. Shedeur getting more playing time in the Pac-12, seeing more of these Colorado State, TCU, Oregon, USC type of games, that is what's going to make Shedeur better as a player, because Deion Sanders is a winner everywhere he goes. He's an All-American at FSU. He's a 2-time SWAC champion, 2-time Coach of the Year for Jackson State. Obviously one of the only players to ever play in a Super Bowl and a World Series. Apparently he didn't play in the World Series on this Bleacher Report interview podcast with Taylor Rooks. He said he was just actually sitting there, but he played in the football game. We know he's a Defensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl champ, one of the best returners. Like, we know Deion Sanders is a winner everywhere he goes. There's no doubt about that. So we know he wants the same for his kids. And I know that Deion is smart enough to know that, again, just 1 year of Pac-12 football combined with 2 years of, yes, great stats, great play. And this isn't a knock on HBCU talent, but we know that HBCU talent is not the cream of the crop when it comes to college football. I'm all about the more coverage going for it. I'm all about how HBCU players should be more in the league. But the fact is a fact. And I think that is why it was a big reason that Deion wanted to go take over Colorado. bring his son with him, make his son the starting quarterback. Oh, he's just a starting quarterback because he's Deion's son. Oh, he's just got Sanders on his last name, so he's going to get that discount. Bullshit. Shedeur Sanders is doing exactly what he needs to do. And these next two games without Travis Hunter against Oregon and against USC, these games will be the difference in Shedeur Sanders being a top 10 / day one pick to a possible day 2 mid-second round guy. And that's no knock to Shedeur because Bo Nix is fantastic. I literally think he looks like Russell Wilson in college right now. Clearly, Caleb Williams is a consensus number 1 overall pick and looks like Patrick Mahomes. We've got a Michael Penix. We've got a Quinn Ewers. And we'd like to rank these guys in the spots because what you see in college matters. That's why we were all talking about Trey Lance. Now we clearly see where he's at. Anthony Richardson with only 13 college games. Like, where you land matters and what you go through matters. You would think SEC quarterbacks, really thankfully with Alabama putting so many in the league lately, Bryce Young, Jalen Hurts, Tua, that they would be the cream of the crop because of the defenses and the offensive schemes that are basically NFL-esque that are inside the SEC. Not always the case, though. So very interesting because we even saw Caleb Williams' dad, say the same thing. My son will not go play if he doesn't like what the first overall pick is presenting. Now we've got NIL. Shedeur Sanders is the second most behind. It's not Caleb because I think Caleb is the fourth. Is it Angel Reese that leads all NIL? I'm not really sure, but these kids are making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million bucks a year. Obviously, and even the longer that Shedeur waits, the more he's going to naturally make because it's only going to be a matter of time before a quarterback signs a $65 million a year deal. I don't care who it is. It's only a matter of time before it happens. So this is kind of a thing that we've seen, like when the transfer portal became a thing, when the extra years of eligibility were starting to get finessed, when NIL came around, like, could these guys really ramp up the playing time, make their money, and get the experience so by the time they go to the league, like, they can kind of take as much control as they can? Because we saw an Eli Manning literally get drafted and not want to go play for the Chargers and ended up going to play for the New York Giants. Not saying it's going to necessarily be the same type of thing, but it is interesting to see as Shedeur Sanders he wouldn't be the number 1 overall pick this year, right? You want your son in the spotlight. You want him to be taken highly, but it's just more pressure. It's just more expectations. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that Shedeur Sanders cannot handle that because he absolutely can. We've seen it time and time again. He's been tested in 3 straight games and is now going to play the 2 biggest games of his career and of the season without their best player, one of their best players in Travis Hunter. So we'll see how everything rolls out. Y'all get in the chat, get in the comments. Let me know what you think about Deion Sanders saying that Shedeur isn't going to go to the NFL draft this year. He wants him to be the number 1 overall pick, not number 2 in the shadow or in the possible limelight of Caleb Williams.